In this corner, the DC Multiverse Michael Keaton Batman as he appears in The Flash. And in this corner, the DC Multiverse Ben Affleck Batman as he kind of appears in The Flash. But the Flash film finally hitting theaters, it's time to ask which Batman is the best. Leastways in action figure form. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off with the packaging, and despite the similarities, there are a couple of details that are worth pointing out. On the side, we see that Keaton is referred to as the Multiverse Batman. It's when we get to the back that a couple of things jump out at me. The first thing you'll notice is that they went with artwork. This has been McFarlane's trend with movie figures. Also, don't worry, I haven't forgotten about her. But while this figure is basically recognizable as Michael Keaton, I'd argue more so than the figure itself, a lot of us already knew going into it that the figure doesn't look like Ben Affleck, but neither does the artwork. In fact, I believe that the box designer simply drew the action figure, and I can prove it. Giving a sneak peek at Posability, you'll see that this Batman actually comes with thigh cut, and so does the drawing. Forget about all the behind-the-scenes Ezra Miller drama, I want to know what's going on with Ben Affleck's likeness rights. Also, the poor guy's clearly having a cape malfunction. For packaging, this round goes to Keaton. Moving on to presentation, and Keaton stands at 7 inches with his ears coming to just under 7.5. Affleck, however, stands at just over 7 inches with his ears bringing him to 7.25. I'm going to be upfront with you, I don't particularly love either of these, but there are things about each one I do like better than the other. For example, there are some engineering choices with Batfleck that I really like. For example, the way the diaphragm articulation is integrated. Because of the breastplate and the straps, it creates a very natural break. Compare that to Keaton, who looks like he was sawed in half. I think it would have been a lot better if this half moon was cut out and the upper abs were underneath. At the very least, he'd look a lot less segmented. There's also something very interesting going on with this belt, but I'm going to save that for later, though I am a little bit confused by these strappies dangling off the sides, and while I am happy he has thigh cut, I feel like it could have been more naturally hidden under here with these panels coming up on the sides. Kinda like this Iron Man. Speaking of the thighs, the texture on Keaton's is completely different from the rest of the body, and it does create a very interesting contrast. I was also pleasantly surprised to see that the boots are a different black from the rest of the body and has some extra paint detail. No word though on if these are Nikes. They do at least have some tread around the edges, same with Affleck. At a glance this feels more like Val Kilmer's suit from Batman Forever, but in some ways is also a natural evolution of what Michael Keaton wore in the first two films. Although different, they're still detailing in the gauntlets, and again the boots are very similar. The logo itself is taken right out of Batman Returns and is very crisp, but I'm honestly not a big fan of these clavicle pieces jutting off the sides, especially when the traditional scallops are on the back, and then there's the head. I'm very happy that mine doesn't have side-eye, but I have to admit I'm still warming up to this face. Comparing it to stills from the movie, and it does seem more like what Michael Keaton looks like these days, it's mostly the extra flesh paint around the hole that looks like he's squeezing out. But what I can't forgive are the rounded off ears. Is he Batman or Batmanta? McFarlane's done lots of long pointy ears on Batman before. I've seen other collectors shave them down, and I might do that, but I'm more concerned that this is a direction that McFarlane Toys is going to go. Also new to the Keaton costume are shoulder pads, because apparently every Batman has to have shoulder pads now. This is a perfect segue to Affleck. This figure notoriously looks nothing like him, but it's not because McFarlane doesn't know how to sculpt him. The prevailing theory is that he didn't sign off likeness rights for the movie. In fact, his name doesn't even appear in the credits. The other major complaint is that the colors are wrong. It's about this time I should point out that action figures are in production for many months before a movie comes out, and near as I can tell, most of the changes were done digitally in post-production. If you look at behind the scenes stills, you'll see what I mean, and you'll also see that this Batman is based off of his stuntman, which for a stuntman honestly has to be a pretty big honor. That said, I'm not going to let McFarlane off the hook for not at least painting some of the armor. The one choice that I'm a bit iffy on is the cloth goods cape. For Keaton it makes sense because it's the only way he'd be able to fit in the Batmobile, and I suppose this probably would help with the Batcycle as well. The fabric that was chosen isn't that bad, but something thicker would always be preferred, and I will say I'm pretty impressed with just how much cape they gave Keaton. Otherwise, the sculpting on Affleck is absolutely incredible, but if you want it to be accurate, you're gonna need to bust out the paints and get a new head and a blue cape. It is absolutely not McFarlane Toys' fault that this figure doesn't match what we saw on screen, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating. Both of these figures would benefit from some customization, though admittedly less so with Keaton. Likeness aside though, and based solely on the intricacy of the sculpted detail, for presentation, I'm giving this round to Affleck. Or should I say, his stunt double. Moving on to Posability, and I may have telegraphed the winner during packaging, but only one way to be sure. Both bats' heads are on dumbbell joints. They can look up this far with Affleck having a slight edge, but Keaton does a better job at burying the chin. Pretty good tilt on both of them, and new to Michael Keaton's Batman, the ability to look side to side. Moving down, both figures have shoulder articulation that gets in the way, but Affleck can raise his arm up much higher. That said, both have bicep swivel. They also both have double jointed elbows, with Keaton getting the better bend, but that's mainly because Affleck's arms are bigger. Traveling down the arm, and both figures have McFarlane style wrist balls. Moving to the middle, and like I said in the last category, this figure's diaphragm joint is much better integrated into the sculpt, but will he have the better range? Affleck can certainly arch much further back, but Keaton hunches forward much better. The secret is this belt. See, I said we get back to it. Unlike most DC Multiverse figures where the belt is part of the diaper, Affleck's is part of his middle torso. Notice the gap here. That really helps with arching back. In fact, if it wasn't for this pointy bit, I bet he'd even be able to hunch forward better as well. That said, both figures can tilt and twist. Below the utility belts, and both Batmen have McFarlane style hips. Affleck can kick this high and split this wide. Keaton can kick this high and split this wide. Alas, Keaton has almost no swivel whatsoever in his hip, but as stated earlier, Affleck has thigh cut. This of course is in service to mounting him on the bat cycle. Of course, both of them have double jointed knees, toe articulation, and McFarlane ankles that swivel, hinge, and just like the tone of Batman from movie to movie, pivot. They say that thick thighs save lives, but thigh cuts save articulation. For Posability, this round goes to Affleck. Moving on to Playability, and as usual, they come with trading cards. And also as usual, for the Flash movie figures, I will not be showing you the back, mainly in the interest of preserving any possible spoilers. It should also come as a surprise to no one that they include figure stands. Keaton also includes a batarang and his grapnel gun. They're clearly modeled off the originals, but for some reason are silver instead of black. But not having seen the new movie yet, maybe there's silver in it. I don't know. Either way, I'm happy to report that Keaton comes with a pair of alternate fists. Affleck, on the other hand, has accessory holding hands, but no accessories. Just like the thigh cuts, however, these are meant for the bat cycle, specifically to hold the handlebars. Still, to McFarlane's credit, they did give him alternate fists as well. But Playability is more than accessories, and even though these two never meet on screen, it all comes down to how well your figures play with others. Starting with some of the Keaton figures that brought us to where we are today, and here we have Toy Biz, Kenner, Mattel, and Spin Master. First, some 6-inch scale options, and here's DC Universe Classics and 80 Years by Mattel. Bringing in Ben though, and here we have the 6-inch scale Keaton by NECA. Also by NECA is this 6-inch Christopher Reeve Superman, which segues beautifully to McFarlane Toys and the DCEU. Here we have Henry Cavill Superman, and Wonder Woman based on her cameo from Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Speaking of Fury of the Gods, and here's Shazam himself, this figure is a fantastic example of just how good a live-action figure from McFarlane Toys can be. On a similar note, and here we have Black Adam. That said, the closest thing we have to a Ben Affleck Batman villain, and here we have Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad. But for a few other villains to spark your imagination, and here we have the Arkham City Penguin, the Arkham City Catwoman, and the Nightfall Catwoman. I've seen some customizers turn her into Michelle Pfeiffer, so I figured I'd include her for scale. Since neither Ben Affleck nor technically Michael Keaton ever had their own Riddler, I figured I'd show off Arkham City, and since we're probably never gonna get a Jack Nicholson Joker, I figured I'd show off the comedian as the next best thing. That said, as more realistic Jokers go, I really do love Mortal Kombat 11. Making our way back over to the Flash movie, however, and here we have the Flash himself in his candy apple red costume, and here he is in his suit from Justice League. Which costume did you like better? Here we have Supergirl of the Sasha Kaye variety, but for a few other live-action Batman figures, and here we have Affleck as he appeared in Justice League, Christian Bale from the Dark Knight trilogy, and Robert Pattinson from The Batman. For a comic book figure I think is fairly significant, and here we have 3 Jokers. I say that because of all the design elements taken from Keaton. But for probably the most important comic Batman comparison, and here we have Flashpoint. Keaton, of course, serves his role in the new movie. That said, for a Keaton comparison I just had to make, and here we have Michael Guff Alfred. Sadly, he is much too small. Hopefully McFarlane will give us some new Alfreds down the road. For a relative scale comparison, here are Batman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And lastly, here they are with Stealth Iron Man from a universe where his legs didn't break. This is about the time in the video where I would be doing head swaps, but there are way too many possible combinations to include here, so each one of these figures is going to get their own head swap video very soon. While there are technically more characters for Batfleck to play with, seeing this figure side by side with them shows how much he doesn't really fit. Keaton, by contrast, not only has more accessories, but can mix and match with other characters from this wave and has his own Batmobile and Batwing. For playability, this round goes to Keaton. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. Both Batmen are a bit hard to find, but they are available at retail right now for about $19.99. But again, Keaton does have more in the box, adding to the value. For price, this round goes to Keaton, who wins the battle 3-2. Which figure do you like better, and more importantly, what live-action Batman is your favorite? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.